The icebreaker. We're going to take a look at level one icebreaker. When you log in and you're at your overview screen, you're able to click on resume and it'll take you to where you last left. The icebreaker is your first opportunity to share something about yourself and your goals with other members of your club. You may want to include some of the following information in your speech to help club members get to know you a little better. Some of those things that you can include in your icebreaker is the reason you joined Toastmasters. You can talk about your previous experiences with public speaking, communication, and leadership. You can speak about important moments or accomplishments in your life or your communication and leadership goals. Mastering fundamentals, I mentioned that there is always going to be your list of resources. For your icebreaker, you're going to have a project checklist. The project checklist is going to let you know the purpose of your project. It's going to give you an overview of how to write and deliver a speech about any topic to introduce yourself to the club. Your icebreaker speech is a 4 to 6 minute speech, and you can find all that information under Project Checklist. You also have your evaluation resource. This is the form that your evaluator will fill out for you. You can email or send this form, which we'll see later in another video, directly to your evaluator for them to complete for your evaluation. You're also able to print your entire icebreaker project. You can print or save this to your computer. And it also gives you a speech outline worksheet that is very helpful to use when doing your icebreaker speech. Once you've printed or saved all of this information from your project resources, you're going to simply click Next, and it's going to walk you through getting started with your icebreaker. So in part one, you're going to find information about the introduction, your know, wonder, learned, and how you can find support. In the introduction of your icebreaker, it's letting you know what your icebreaker speech can be about, how long the icebreaker speech is, and your assignment. We'll select next. And now we get to the know and wonder. And later on, there'll be a third section called learned. This activity helps you think about what you know about public speaking and communication. You want to be sure to respond to every statement. So, what do you know already? For example, I know my strengths as a communicator. What do you wonder about this? I wonder about the structure of a basic speech. And you would just simply click on Add New Item and enter your information here. Gives you a list of competencies that you're going to learn in this project. And we're going to click Next. And then in part two of the icebreaker speech, you're going to get into the value of the icebreaker, planning your speech, and looking ahead. And here you're going to find videos that will give you a short information about the icebreaker. You'll see some videos as you go along the way. Make sure to check those out. They're very interesting and have some great tips to help you along your journey. You're going to learn about organizing your speech. And it's telling you about what the four elements of a good story are. You want to have an interesting topic, opening, body, and conclusion. And then this is the speech outline worksheet that was under the resource tab. If you click on the little plus button, it will tell you what each section is about. Once you organize your speech, then you want to prepare and present. So then we have information on writing it out. Once you create your outline, you want to write your speech. And then you want to remember your outline. You can do this by creating note cards or an outline with a few bullet points from your speech on a page. Then it talks about connecting with your audience. Effective speaking requires you to look up from a written speech and connect with your audience. It also provides you with some techniques that you can practice, like rehearsing with your friends or family. Record yourself. Use a mirror, practice sessions, and most importantly, make sure you're timing yourself. And then they give you a little bit more information about timing, pacing, organization, and then there's a review and learn. Once you've went through this information, now it's time to communicate with your evaluator. You want to make sure that you're talking with your evaluator before your speech and request feedback on any specific skills that you want to develop. And you want to make sure that you are completing the top portion of the icebreaker evaluation resource so that your evaluator will have all the information that they need to meet your goals and expectations. And then there's a video on how a club manages speakers, evaluations, and speeches. Now it's time to relax and breathe. It gives you some tips about overcoming anxiety. Once you've went through part 2 of the icebreaker speech, now it's what happens after your speech. So we're looking at understanding Toastmasters feedback, accepting feedback, and then learning a little bit more. So here you're going to get some information about your feedback from your first speech. And it could come different ways depending on your club. You can get verbal evaluation, a written evaluation, and then depending on your club practices, you may receive written and verbal. And then it gives you some information about accepting feedback and then ask for clarification if you're not understanding everything that was said to you during your evaluation. Okay? And then it gives you some tips about meeting with your evaluator. So at the close of the meeting, you want to make sure to take time to meet with your evaluator and review your evaluation. Make sure you're using your time well. And as always, be thoughtful, engage, stay positive, and listen. And then once you receive your feedback, you want to apply what you've learned. And then it also states you want to evaluate yourself. When your speech is complete, take some time and reflect on how well you did. Regardless of how you're feeling, if it was excitement, nervousness, whatever it may be, you deserve to be proud because you have just finished your icebreaker speech. And that alone is a great accomplishment. So once you've done that, we want to review and apply. So then you're going to come where it's going to ask you some questions about um, where you are right now. Now, if you're not able to answer them comfortably, you can go back and review the project, save your responses, and come back and update it at any time. But some of the questions are, what are some strategies you can use to balance preparation and spontaneity, live recording you all. So when delivering your speech, list your strongest communication and leadership skills. What are the elements of a basic speech structure? How will you approach receiving speech evaluations from a peer? And every time that you enter something, make sure that you're hitting the save button to be able to record your responses. And then once you complete that, now, I will say, if you do not fill out all of this information, it still will allow you to go to the next section. It will also allow you to still complete your level 1 if all of these are not answered. If this is your first time in Pathways and you're just learning how to put together a speech, I strongly encourage you to go through and answer all questions that are listed in these levels. All right, now you're ready to complete your assignment. Now we're going to take a look at it's basically an overview. So you have your project purpose, you have your project overview. It's telling you what your project is going to include, and then it has this great checklist to help you navigate through. So did you schedule your speech with your vice president of education? Have you written your speech? Have you practiced your speech? And then have you communicated with your evaluator, met with your evaluator, applied any feedback? And then once all of this is finished, you can simply click on them and it'll strike it through it. And if you haven't and got to go back, you can just simply click on it and it'll remove that strike through. Also, if your vice president of education requires another task for you to complete before giving your speech, you can add a new task here and it'll add it to this checklist. Okay. And then it gives you information about your evaluation. These are the scores that help you review the criteria that's in your evaluation project using the scale. And it lets you know what exemplary is and what we're looking at when we're evaluating you on if you're meeting each one of these. Okay. And also, this gives you an option to go to member feedback. I'll get more into detail of that in another video. And then how to evaluate. Now it's time, part 4, reflect on your learning. You're going to take your time, complete the learned section of No Wonder Learned, and then we're going to complete our project. You remember we talked about the know and wonder, and then the next part is learned. What did you learn through this project? For example, I learned to recognize the skills I need to develop to improve my communication, and then you enter that and you add your item. This is where you will enter the details of your speech. In another video, I'll show you where you can find this information at and also how you can get to it quickly. So you would enter your speech title, The Joy of Happiness, the date that you delivered your speech or will deliver your speech, the club that you're doing the speech for, who your evaluator will be, and your evaluation form. And then here is where you can request. Since I know who's going to be my evaluator, I can ask my evaluator to look at anything that I wish for them to pay a little bit more attention to when I'm doing my speech. And once I enter my evaluator's name and this information, I can either just save it or I can save this an email will go out to my evaluator with my evaluation form and with my request. Okay. Once you complete all of that, you'll hit next. Then it's just going to give you some information. We did review your learning, you delivered your speech, you received your evaluation, you did your assess and reflect, and here we are. Congratulations, you have completed your icebreaker project and you are ready to move on to your next project. So when you finished all the tasks in your project and you're ready to mark it complete, you'll simply hit complete my project.